The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was built to make visitors feel small. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed inside. Its walls were covered with the flags of 43 species, and at its center, a circular table held seats for every member race. On this day, one seat would become empty forever. Ambassador Park Do-yeon walked slowly toward the speaking platform. He was 63 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served humanity for 40 years. He had smiled through insults. He had stayed calm through accusations. He had watched his people be dismissed, ignored, and mocked. Today, he would say goodbye. The other ambassadors barely looked at him. The Rathani delegation was busy talking among themselves. Their leader, Counselor Vethel, had blue skin and 4 arms. He glanced at the human with the same look one might give an insect. The Kelthrix hegemony sat in their heavy armor. Their Primarch, a massive creature named OS, yawned with a mouth full of teeth. To him, humans were weak, soft, not worth attention. Park Do-yeon reached the platform and cleared his throat. The hall slowly fell silent. Not out of respect, but out of habit. Distinguished members of the Galactic Council, he began. His voice was calm and steady. I come before you today with a simple message. Humanity withdraws from this council, effective immediately. We take nothing that is not ours. We ask for nothing in return. We wish you well. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Counselor Vethel laughed. It was not a kind laugh. Finally, he said, the humans have realized they do not belong here. It only took them 200 years. Several other delegates joined in the laughter. The Kelthrix Primarch grunted in approval. Even the smaller species, the ones humanity had often defended, stayed silent. They were too afraid to speak. Park Do-yeon did not react. He simply bowed once, turned, and walked out of the Great Hall. He did not look back. Outside, Captain Yoon Murray was waiting for him. She was 45, with short black hair and sharp eyes. She commanded the diplomatic fleet that had protected human interests for 15 years. Now, she would command its departure. It is done? She asked. Park Do-yeon nodded. It is done. They walked together toward the landing bay. Behind them, the sounds of celebration echoed from the council hall. Someone had opened drinks. Someone else was making jokes about human weakness. Murray's jaw tightened. They celebrate. Let them park, Do-yeon said. They do not understand what they are celebrating. Within 6 hours, every human ship had left council space. Every human worker had packed their belongings. Every human doctor, engineer, teacher, and soldier had gone home. The council species watched them go with relief. For 2 centuries, humans had been a problem. They asked too many questions. They cared too much about fairness. They defended species that nobody else cared about. They insisted on ethics when others wanted profit. Now they were gone. Counselor Vethel returned to his chambers that night, feeling satisfied. He had spent 30 years trying to push humanity out of the council. He had spread rumors about human aggression. He had blocked human proposals. He had made sure humans were never given important positions. And now, finally, they had given up. He poured himself a drink and looked out at the stars. Good riddance, he said to no one. On the human colony ship heading back to Earth, things were quieter. Thousands of diplomats, workers, and their families sat in silence. Many of them had spent their whole lives in council space. They had friends among other species. They had built homes. They had believed in cooperation. Now, they were leaving it all behind. A young engineer named Baek Jasu sat by a window. She was 32 and had spent the last 8 years maintaining communication relays across 14 space stations. It was hard work, important work. Nobody had ever thanked her for it. What happens now? She asked the woman next to her. Dr. Han Sujen looked up from her tablet. She was a medical researcher, 50 years old, with gentle eyes. She had spent 20 years developing treatments for diseases that only affected small, poor species. Species the council did not care about. Now, Dr. Han said we go home, and we let them learn. Learn what? Dr. Hahn smiled sadly. Learn what they lost. Back on the council station, the celebration continued for 3 days. Speeches were made about the new era of progress. Plans were discussed for taking over human territories. The Kelthrix Primarch talked about seizing human technology. Nobody noticed when the first communication relay went dark. It was a small station in the outer sectors. When it stopped working, technicians assumed it was a simple malfunction. They sent a repair team. The repair team found the station perfectly intact. All the equipment was there, but it would not turn on. Every system required a human authorization code. Without it, the station was just dead metal. The technicians reported the problem to their superiors. Their superiors promised to look into it. Nobody was worried yet. On Earth, Ambassador Park Do-yan met with the human government. He gave his final report in a small room with simple furniture. No grand halls. No giant flags. Just people talking honestly. They will come asking for help, he said. It may take months. It may take years. But they will come. The president, a woman named Moon Ha-jin, nodded slowly. And what do we tell them? Park Do-yan was quiet for a long moment. He thought about 40 years of service. 40 years of being dismissed. 40 years of watching his people be treated as lesser. We tell them what they told us, he finally said. We tell them that we wish them well. Outside the window, Earth hung in space, blue and green and beautiful. Home to 8 billion humans who had just cut ties with the galaxy. They were alone now, but they were free. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, Captain Yoon Mi-rae guided her fleet home. She did not know what the future would bring. She did not know if they had made the right choice, but she knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would remember this day. Not because of what humanity had said. Not because of any grand gesture or angry speech. They would remember it because of the silence that came after. The silence of empty stations. The silence of abandoned posts. The silence of 1,000 quiet workers who had kept everything running. The humans had departed quietly, and the galaxy was about to learn just how loud that silence could be. 3 months had passed since the humans left. At first, nothing seemed different. The council continued its meetings. Trade ships flew their routes. Life went on. Then things started to break. It began small. A relay station here. A water purifier there. A medical scanner that stopped working. Each problem seemed unconnected. Each problem seemed minor. Administrator Kelix was the first to see the pattern. Kelix was a Vorthani, species known for their love of records and data. He was short, gray-skinned, and had spent 40 years as a bureaucrat. His job was to track resources across council space. It was boring work. Nobody paid attention to him. But Kelix paid attention to everything. He sat in his small office, surrounded by screens and reports. His 4 eyes moved quickly over the data. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Computer, he said, show me all system failures in the last 90 days. The list appeared. It was long. Much longer than normal. Show me which systems were maintained by human workers. The computer processed the request. When the answer came, Kelix felt his stomach drop. 73%. 73% of the failed systems had been maintained by humans. Workers who were now gone. Workers who had taken their knowledge with them. Kelix immediately requested a meeting with the council. He was denied. He requested again. Denied again? On his 3rd request, he was told to stop wasting the council's time, so he wrote a report instead. It took him 2 weeks to complete. When he was finished, it was over 4,000 pages long. The report documented everything humans had been doing. Communication networks, medical research, navigation charts, food distribution, water treatment, power systems, transportation schedules. Humans had been everywhere, doing everything, asking for nothing in return. And nobody had noticed until they were gone. Kelix sent the report to Counselor Vethel directly. He did not expect a response. Vethel read the report alone in his chambers. With each page, his blue skin grew paler. By the end, his 4 hands were shaking. "This cannot be right," he whispered, but it was right. Every word of it. The medical crisis came first. On 7 different worlds, plagues began spreading. These were not new diseases. They were old ones. Ones that had been contained for decades, contained by human doctors. Dr. Han? Sujin had spent 20 years developing treatments for these plagues. She had trained local medical staff. She had built clinics. She had worked 18-hour days to keep people alive. Now she was gone. And she had taken her research with her. The council tried to recreate her work. They failed. Her notes were written in a human coding system. Her equipment required human authorization. Her treatments used compounds that only humans knew how to make. Within weeks, millions were sick. Within months, thousands were dead. The Rithani homeworld was hit hardest. A plague called the Grey Death swept through their cities. It was a disease that only affected Rithani. No other species had ever bothered to study it, except for the humans. Counselor Vethel watched. His people die and felt something he had never felt. Before regret, the navigation crisis came. Next, the shattered expanse was a region of space, filled with broken planets and unstable gravity wells. It was dangerous, deadly, impossible to cross, except humans had mapped it beak. Jisu and her team had spent years charting safe passages through the expanse. They had placed markers. They had calculated routes. They had made the impossible possible. Now the charts were gone. The markers were dark, and ships were disappearing. The expanse was the fastest route between the inner and outer sectors. Without it, trade ships had to take paths that were 3 times longer. Supplies ran late. Prices rose. Shortages began. On a dozen worlds, people started going hungry. The Kelthrix hegemony decided to take action. Primarch OS was tired of waiting for solutions. He was a warrior. Warriors did not wait. Warriors took what they needed. He sent his soldiers to seize the human technology left behind. The communication relays, the medical equipment, the navigation computers, all of it. His soldiers found the equipment easily. It was sitting right where the humans had left it. But none of it worked. Every piece of human technology had been designed with biometric locks. Only humans could activate them. Without a human present, the machines were useless. Primarch OS ordered his engineers to break the locks. They tried. They failed. The security systems were unlike anything they had seen before. One engineer made a mistake. He triggered a failsafe. The entire communication relay exploded, killing 30 Kelthrix soldiers. After that, nobody tried to break the locks again. Counselor Vethel called an emergency session of the council. For the first time in memory, every seat was filled. Every species was worried. "We must contact the humans," Vethel said. "We must ask them to return." Primarch OS slammed his fist on the table. "We do not beg. We are the Galactic Council. We are the greatest powers in the galaxy." "We are dying," Vethel replied quietly. "My people are dying. Your trade routes are collapsing. The outer colonies are starving. We need their help." The debate lasted for hours. In the end, they voted. The result was close. But the decision was made. They would send a message to Earth. They would ask humanity to return. The message was sent that night. It was formal and polite. It spoke of misunderstandings and renewed cooperation. It did not include an apology. Weeks passed. No response came. They sent another message. Then another. Still nothing. On Earth, Director Cho Young-ji read each message carefully. She was head of human external relations, a soft-spoken woman with a gift for patience. Should we respond? Her assistant asked Cho Yoon-ji set down the messages. She thought about the years of insults, the decades of dismissal, the centuries of being told that humans were lesser. "Not yet," she said. "Let them wait a little longer." Outside her window, human cities glowed with light and life. Free from council taxes, free from council restrictions, free from a galaxy that had never wanted them. For the first time in 200 years, Humanity was building something for themselves, and they were in no hurry to go back. 8 months after the humans left, the Void Marauders attacked. The Marauders were a coalition of pirates, criminals, and exiled species. For 100 years, they had lurked at the edges of Council space. They raided small colonies. They attacked lonely ships. They were dangerous, but contained by human strategy. The Council did not know this. They believed their own military kept the Marauders at bay. They believed Kelthric's strength protected them. They believed in their own power. They were wrong. Admiral Kang Taiwu had retired 5 years before the human departure. He was 70 years old now. Living on a quiet colony world far from Earth, he spent his days gardening and reading old books. But he still watched the news. When the Marauders crossed the border, he was not surprised. He had predicted this years ago. He had written reports. He had proposed defenses. He had begged the Council to prepare. They had ignored him. They had called his concerns human paranoia. Now the Marauders were burning through Council space like fire through dry grass. The first attack came at Station Kareth, a trading post near the border. The Marauders arrived with 60 ships. The Council Defense Fleet had 12. The battle lasted for hours. When it was over, Station Kareth was gone. 30,000 people were dead or captured. Primarch OS was furious. He gathered his fleets and launched a counterattack. The Kelthrics were proud warriors. They had won dozens of battles. They had conquered entire systems. But those victories had not been theirs alone, Commander. Shin Yuna had served the Council military for 60 years. She was a small woman, with gray hair and sharp eyes. She never raised her voice. She never sought glory. She had also planned every major Kelthric's victory for 3 decades. The Kelthric's commanders had taken credit for her work. They had accepted medals and praise. They had written books about their own genius. Shin Yuna had said nothing. She had simply done her job. Now she was gone. And the Kelthrics were learning what that meant. Primarch Oz led his counterattack personally. He commanded 200 ships against the Marauder fleet. He expected an easy victory. What he got was a disaster. The Marauders used tactics nobody had seen before. They split their forces. They attacked from multiple directions. They retreated when pressed and struck when least expected. OS did not know how to respond. His training covered direct combat, charge and destroy. Overwhelm the enemy with force, but force was not enough. Strategy was needed, and strategy it left with the humans. The battle ended with Kelthric ships scattered across space. 80 vessels destroyed, 40 more captured. Primarch OS barely escaped with his life. Back on his flagship, he sat alone in his chambers. For the first time in his life, he felt afraid. "How?" he whispered. "How did we lose?" His aide brought him a report. It was an old document, written years ago. A battle plan for defending against exactly this kind of attack. The author was Commander Shin Yuna.os. Read the plan carefully. It was brilliant. Every detail was perfect. Every contingency was covered, and it had been rejected by the Council Military Committee. The reason given was simple. Human thinking does not apply to Kelthric's warfare. Put down the report. His hands were shaking. The Marauders pushed deeper into Council space. They captured 3 worlds in 2 weeks. Refugees flooded into the core systems. Millions of people with nowhere to go. The Rathani homeworld was directly in the invasion. Path Counselor Vethel watched the reports with growing horror. His world had no real military. The Rethani were diplomats and traitors, not warriors. They had always relied on others for protection that was no longer coming. He sent urgent messages to the Kelthrics, begging for defense ships. Primarch OS replied that his forces were needed elsewhere. The Rithani would have to defend themselves. Vethel then did something he never thought he would do. He sent a personal message to Earth. "Please," he wrote, "help us." On Earth, Admiral Kang Taiwu received a copy of the message. A friend in the government had sent it to him. He read Vethel's desperate words and felt nothing. mocked us for decades. He said to his wife that evening, "They called us weak. They said we were primitive." His wife, a woman named Kong Minhye, poured him tea. She had been a council translator for 30 years. She had heard every insult, every dismissal, every cruel joke. "What would you have us do?" she asked. Tae-woo was silent for a long moment. "I would have us remember," he said finally. "Remember how they treated us? Remember what they said? Remember why we left. And then decide if we want to be like them." The council met in emergency session. The great hall that had once seemed so powerful now felt hollow. Empty seats where dead ambassadors had once sat. Broken screens showing worlds that had fallen. Counselor Vethel stood before his colleagues. He was no longer proud. He was no longer arrogant. He was simply tired. "We must send a delegation to Earth," he said. "Not a message. A delegation. We must go in person. We must ask for help face to face." Primarch Os growled. "You would have us crawl to the humans." "I would have us survive," Vethel replied. The vote was unanimous. They would send a delegation. Vethel volunteered to lead it himself. He did not know if the humans would help. He did not know if they would even listen. But he knew one thing. He had spent 30 years pushing humanity away. He had worked to make them feel unwelcome. He had succeeded beyond his wildest dreams, and now his people were paying the price, as his ship prepared to leave for Earth. Vethel looked back at the council station. It seemed smaller than he remembered, weaker. "I was so proud," he whispered to himself. "So certain we did not need them." The ship jumped to hyperspace behind him. The Void Marauders continued their advance, and somewhere in human space, 8 billion people watched the galaxy burn. They had not started this fire, but only they could put it out. The question was, would they choose to? The human border was marked by a single station. It was small and simple. No weapons. No grand displays. Just a quiet checkpoint where visitors were processed. Counselor Vethel had expected something different. He had expected warships and defenses. He had expected humans to be afraid, hiding behind walls of steel. Instead, he found a young officer offering him tea. "Welcome to human space," the officer said. Her name tag read Bae Sionwa. She was 25 years old and smiled like she meant it. "Director Cho will meet with you on Earth. Please follow me." And his delegation followed her onto a transport ship. The ship was clean and comfortable. The seats were designed to fit multiple species. Someone had thought about their needs. That small detail bothered Vethel more than he expected. The journey to Earth took 3 days. During that time, Vethel watched through the windows. He saw human colonies on moons and asteroids. He saw trade ships moving freely. He saw children playing in orbital stations. Everything looked peaceful, prosperous, happy. "They are not suffering," one of his aides whispered. "They are thriving." Vethel said nothing. But he understood now what he had not understood before. Humanity had not left because they were weak. They had left because they were strong. Strong enough to build their own future. Strong enough to walk away from those who did not want them. Earth was beautiful. Vethel had never visited before. He had never cared to. Now he stood on the surface of humanity's homeworld and felt something strange in his chest. The sky was blue. The trees were green. The air smelled like flowers and rain. Humans walked past him on the street, some glancing curiously at the alien delegation, but most simply going about their lives. Nobody seemed afraid. Nobody seemed angry. They had moved on. Director Cho Yoonji met them in a simple government building. She was 60 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a neat style. Her office had plants by the window and family pictures on the desk. She offered them tea. Then she offered them seats. Then she listened. Vethel spoke for an hour. He described the Marauder invasion. He described the plagues and the failing systems. He described the millions of refugees and the worlds that had fallen. He did not make excuses. He did not blame others. He simply told the truth. When he finished, Director Cho was quiet for a long moment. What exactly are you asking for? She said. Help, Vethel replied. Military support. Medical assistance. Engineering teams. Anything you can provide. And what do you offer in return? Vethel hesitated. We can discuss trade agreements. Resource sharing. Political alliances. Director Cho smiled. It was not a cruel smile, but it was not warm either. Counselor, for 200 years, humanity asked for nothing but respect. We asked to be treated as equals. We asked to have our concerns heard. We asked for basic dignity. She paused. You offered us none of those things. Now you offer trade agreements. Vethel felt his face grow hot. I understand your anger. But please, there are innocent people dying, children, families, people who never harmed humanity.
Yes.
Director Cho agreed. There are, and that is very sad. But it is not our responsibility. The meeting ended without agreement. Vethel was given comfortable quarters and told to wait. That evening, Ambassador Park Doyen came to see him. Park was older now. His hair was completely white. His steps were slower, but his eyes were still sharp, still kind. May I sit? He asked. Vethel nodded. The two of them sat together by a window, looking out at the Earth city below. I remember you, Park said. 30 years ago at my first council meeting, you laughed at my speech? Vethel closed his eyes. I remember. I said human concerns were emotional and primitive. Yes, you did. Silence stretched between them. I was wrong, Vethel said finally. About everything. About humans. About what mattered. About what strength really means. Park Doyen nodded slowly. It takes courage to admit that. It takes suffering, Vethel replied bitterly. I did not learn wisdom. I learned pain. Park was quiet for a while. Then he spoke again. When I was young, my grandmother told me a story. She said that holding anger is like holding a hot stone. You want to throw it at someone else, but you are the one getting burned. Vethel looked at him. So humans have forgiven us? No, Park said honestly. Forgiveness takes time. Many humans are still angry. Many still hurt. But forgiveness is a choice, not a feeling. And some of us are choosing to try. Will your government help us? Park Doyen stood slowly. He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. I do not know, he said. That decision is not mine to make. But I can tell you this. Humanity has never been able to watch others suffer without wanting to help. It is our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. He turned back to Vethel. You hurt us deeply. You made us feel unwelcome in a galaxy we only wanted to serve. That wound will take generations to heal. He paused. But we are not you. We will not become what you were. We will find our own path. Vethel bowed his head. For the first time in his long life, he felt truly humbled. Thank you, he whispered, for listening, for even considering our request. Park Doyen placed a hand on the alien's shoulder. It was a simple human gesture, a gesture of connection. Go home, counselor. Take care of your people as best you can. And whatever happens, remember this moment. Remember that you came asking for help from those you once mocked. He walked toward the door.
Yes.
Maybe that memory will help your people become something better, something kinder, something worthy of the galaxy you want to rebuild. The door closed behind him. Vethel sat alone in the quiet room. Looking out at the stars, he had come seeking salvation. He was leaving with something. It's more valuable. He was leaving with understanding. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was the beginning of something new. 3 years had passed since the humans departed. The galaxy was unrecognizable. The Galactic Council had dissolved. There was no grand ceremony, no final vote. The Great Hall simply emptied, one species at a time, till only dust and silence remained. The Kelthrix hegemony had collapsed into civil war. Primarch Os was dead, killed by his own officers after leading them into another disastrous battle. His empire had shattered into a dozen fighting factions. The Void Marauders had been stopped, but not by the Council. They had pushed too far, stretched too thin, and eventually destroyed themselves through greed and infighting. The threat had ended, but the damage was done, and through it all, the Rithani homeworld had survived. Not because of Kelthric's protection, not because of council intervention, because of humans. When the Marauders had reached the Rithani system, evacuation ships had appeared from human space. They were not military vessels. They were civilian transports, cargo haulers, and private yachts. Ordinary humans who had seen the news and decided to help. Nobody had ordered them to go. The human government had not sent them. They had simply loaded their ships with supplies and flown into danger. 3 million Rithani were saved that day. 3 million lives pulled from the fire by people who had every reason to let them. Burned Counselor Vettel was among the survivors. He had stayed on his homeworld until the last evacuation ship, helping others board before himself. When a human captain had asked why he did not leave sooner, Vettel had smiled sadly. "Because someone taught me that leaders should serve their people," he said. Not the other way around. Now Vettel lived on a small human colony called New Harbor. He had no official position. He held no power. He was simply an old alien living among humans, trying to understand the people he had once dismissed. He spent his days in a small garden, growing plants from his homeworld. Human neighbors sometimes stopped to talk. Children asked him questions about his species. Nobody treated him with hatred. He did not understand why. One day, Ambassador Park Do-yeon came to visit. The old human was 80 years old now, retired from all official duties. He walked with a cane and moved slowly, but his eyes were still kind. "I heard you made friends with the children next door," Park said, sitting beside Vettel in the garden. Vettel nodded. "They are curious. They ask many questions about Rithani culture. They want to learn. Humans are like that. We cannot help wanting to understand others." Vettel was silent for a moment. Then he spoke. "I spent my whole life believing humans were lesser, weak, emotional, primitive. I spent 30 years trying to push you out of the council." When he paused, "And when my world was burning, it was humans who came to save us. Not warriors. Not governments. Just ordinary people in ordinary ships." Park Do-yeon nodded slowly. "That is who we are. We cannot watch suffering without acting. Even when we are angry. Even when we have been hurt." "I do not deserve your kindness," Vettel said quietly. "Perhaps not," Park agreed. "But kindness is not given because it is deserved. It is given because it is needed." Somewhere across human space, President Moon Hajin was addressing her people. She stood before a massive crowd, her voice carried across 100 worlds. 3 years ago, we left a galaxy that did not want us. We walked away from powers that mocked us, dismissed us, and treated us as lesser beings. She paused. We could have become bitter. We could have closed our borders and let the galaxy burn. We could have taken revenge for centuries of mistreatment. Her voice softened. But that is not who we are. Humanity's strength has never been in weapons or wealth. Our strength is in our choice to care, to help, to reach out even when we have been pushed away.
How?
The crowd was silent, listening. The old council's gone. The old powers have fallen. And now the galaxy looks to us, wondering what we will do. She smiled. "We will not build another council. We will not create another empire. We will not repeat the mistakes of those who came before. Instead, we will help. One world at a time. One person at a time. Not because we must. Not because we expect anything in return, but because that is what humanity has always done." In the crowd, a young officer named Bae Jung-woo listened. He was 28 years old, assigned to the first human outreach mission. Tomorrow, he would leave for a devastated world in former council space. He would bring food, medicine, and engineers to help rebuild. He had never known the old council. He had grown up in a free humanity, unburdened by centuries of mistreatment. To him, the past was history. The future was what mattered. An older woman stood beside him. Her name was Lee Naeong. She was 55, a veteran aid worker who had spent her life helping those in need. "Are you ready?" she asked. Jung-woo nodded. "I think so. But I wonder sometimes. These species treated humanity so badly. Why should we help them? Naong smiled. Because someone has to be kind first. Someone has to break the cycle of pain. If not us, who? Jungwoo thought about that. It was a simple answer. Maybe too simple, but maybe that was exactly what the galaxy needed. Simple kindness. Simple compassion. Simple humanity. On a refugee station, orbiting a dead world, a Rithani child watched human aid workers unload supplies. She was 8 years old and had lost her parents in the evacuation. She had been alone for months, cared for by strangers. One of the workers, a human woman, noticed her watching. The woman walked over and knelt down to the child's level. "Lo," she said softly. "My name is Lee Naong. What is your name?" The child was silent for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been burning in her heart. "Hey, why do you help us? We were mean to your people. We hurt you. Why do you not hate us?" Lee Naong looked at the child with gentle eyes. She thought about all the years of mistreatment, all the insults and dismissals, all the pain, and then she smiled. "Because someone has to be kind first," she said, "and we chose to be that someone." She offered her hand to the child. "Come, let me show you where you will sleep tonight. It is warm and safe, and tomorrow we will find you something good to eat." The child took her hand. Together they walked toward the shelter. Above them, stars burned in the endless darkness. A galaxy that had once rejected humanity now depended on their mercy. The humans had departed quietly 3 years ago. Now they returned quietly too, not as conquerors, not as rulers, just as humans. And perhaps that was the greatest strength of all.